Welcome, everyone, and you are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Aversano. On today's pod, we talk to founder and CEO of ShipIn Systems, Osher Perry. ShipIn Systems is the world's first fleet vision platform, enabling seamless ship-to-shore collaboration for maritime fleets. By deploying AI-powered cameras and real-time visual analytics, ShipIn's platform proactively alerts ship owners, managers, and seafarers, reducing incidents on board by 40%, and increasing cargo operations efficiency by 8%. Osher, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So I love to talk about how people take a journey into, especially for founders. And we've had a handful of really great founders, and I'm so excited to have you on. Talk about the journey, about how you started ShipIn Systems, because it is a really unique idea to something that has been happening since the dawn of time, and that is, how do we help seafarers do their job a little bit better, but even remotely. So talk a little bit about that.
Again, appreciate the invitation to participate at the podcast. So background, I'm calling in from Boston, Massachusetts, which has been my home for the last 10 years. But originally, I'm from Israel. I was a naval officer there for about 8 years, chief officer of the largest Navy vessel, and has sailed the high seas for some time there. I then decided to leave the military career but stayed at sea and circumnavigated the world as a captain to a sailing vessel over 2 years. Came back with my wife, who was an Olympic sailor for the New Zealand team, and we actually met sailing through the Pacific. And so about 10 years at sea, all up. Then business school, worked in investments for about 3 years, focusing on impact investing with a British fund, and then moved to technology in what you would say is legacy traditional industries, especially when you talk 10 years back, on agriculture and then in manufacturing. And after about 6-7 years in technology and the 10 years at sea, decided maybe it's time to put those two hats together. And together with the co-founder of ShipIn, Ilan Naslavsky, he and I worked together at the last company. He's on the technology side, machine learning, data science experience. Started kind of playing around with how I come back to the maritime, how we build something to bring value to this industry. And so we established a company about 3.5, almost 4 years ago, and it's been quite a ride.
I think you're one of the first people to really get with the heavy on the sailing there. That must have been pretty interesting stuff. So what was when you first started? This is a great lead into kind of the next kind of idea here. When you started the company, what was your kind of initial vision, and how has it kind of evolved and changed since you started this? Because I think that's always one of the more interesting things. I started the company looking at this, and now I look at that. Maybe a little bit of overlap, but where have you seen that journey? From when you started 3.5-4 years ago with your partner, coming out of sailing and being in the Israeli Navy, to where you are today.
So look, when we started, and I mentioned, it started with an interest of understanding that maritime as an environment, as an industry, is at a very exciting place where, more and more attention is being placed on the next generation of tools that the industry can benefit from. And the way we started was actually through understanding everything that has to do with innovation in the maritime space. So we've spent some time reviewing what every initiative that you could think of or hear about around the world, and what are they involved in, right? And then it became very, very, very clear that at that time you could place most initiatives in kind of three main buckets. One is I take the AIS information and I kind of do data analytics on top of that, or I put the IoT infrastructure on board the vessels and I give you flow meters and temperature sensors and all that. And then the third is the whole situational awareness and autonomous navigation capabilities, and everything that was around fell into one of these buckets. And we even see now, the merging of the AIS and the IoT into the whole CII and fuel efficiency and so on. And when you talk about the situational awareness aspect, I have, my theory, my thoughts about how long will it take for an average ship owner to actually adopt it across their entire fleet, and what is the value that it is providing today. Whether maybe it's something that actually lies further in the future. What was very clearly, the result of this analysis is that when you talk about how vessels are operating today, and when you think about what the vessel of the future might look like, the gap, is very clear, right? It's pretty wide. And as someone that is coming from operational background through the Navy and also later on in my career, the whole aspect of the operations on board the vessels has been it's been staring at us, and we started to kind of focus there. And specifically on how do we take the machine learning, the artificial intelligence tools that exist and have been developed in other industries, create them with a IP that is specific for the environment in which we're operating, and targeted to the value of the industry for the ship owners, managers, and the stakeholders in the space. And so that's how we came about to the whole operations aspect, and the how do you look at connecting the ship to shore. And we often talk about, $100 million vessel and $100 million manufacturing facility, and how what is the performance management on each of those, and the gaps that exist in the maritime space on vessels. And as we all know, as a ship owner, as a ship manager, you don't have one vessel. You have maybe 30 of them, you have 70 of them around the world. And so the importance of such tools is even greater, I would argue, than what exists on land. To your question about how true we stayed, I don't know if it's good or bad, but we're pretty on target when it comes to the vision of focusing on the operation, improving the operations on board the vessels, and becoming a digital bridge between the ships and the shore, right? Working as if we can say shoulder to shoulder. And so the tool has been developed, has been adapted, has been added features based on the customer's feedback. But the concept, the vision that we set out with is true to from the establishment to today.
What I find really fascinating is the fact that we've heard this in other places. We interviewed somebody of DTN and their weather routing, but they got their start in farming, and they do their kind of, we sell to farmers and have to help them as well. And it's the same sort of idea. But again, the difference with farming and with having a $100 million plant making something somewhere and $100 million ship moving across is just I think the lack of consistency with the operators, the physical people who go on. Again, you may have some crew that come back to the ship, but after a few months they leave, and then maybe they come back after a few months after that. But certainly that is a challenge, and probably one of the things that make a product like yours kind of interesting. One of the technology which you keep mentioning is AI. And we've talked about some folks here. You either think of AI is going to be wonderful, or if you're of my generation, you think of, Skynet, and you think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you think of that sort of thing. Where the reality lies, hopefully closer to something a little bit more amicable. But all kidding aside, when you go into offices, you start talking to ship owners and ship managers about what this does. How is that, idea of having AI, how is that being perceived, and has that changed even in the 4 short years that you've been in business? I feel that people's attitudes have changed. What have you seen on the ground as you're going in and selling the product and talking to folks?
As you heard briefly from my background, I'm not a technologist, right? I'm not a developer, I'm not a coder. I'm an operations guy, right? And maybe on a good day, you can also maybe a little bit of business development and partnerships. You won't hear me talk about technology, right? I won't use, when we talk to customers, when we talk about what we do, I don't talk about technology. I talk about what is the value of the solution and what it actually does on the operational level to the customers. AI or a hammer or any other tool is just a tool, right? And so there are tools that exist today that can bring forward certain advancements. And so, from my perspective, my humble perspective, this is the role of the solution. Is being brought forward, and that's the role of AI and all the other buzzwords that we like talking about. At the end of the day, you have an operation to manage, you have a ship to run. What automation can you bring in? What rule-based? How do you remove the burden or reduce the burden from the seafarers? How do you connect them to shore to get the support that they need? How do you, this is all that matters. What value are you providing on the safety side and the economic side for the operations of the fleet, of the vessel, of the individuals in the industry? That's our role and how we view the world.
So really, when you guys go in and talk to folks, you're not maybe a little bit less on the behind the scenes and nuts and bolts, and more on this is what we can do for you, and that probably elicits more of a positive or a positive feedback from your clients, because once you start showing this is how they could do it and get these efficiencies, especially when it comes to the operations group or the technical management group, that's probably is where the lights go on, and they maybe care a little bit less about what technology is. One of the things that, one of the side notes of this is, given that it's camera based, do you get a lot of pushback on things like, oh, this is privacy, this is other stuff? Do you get pushback from crews and things like that? Or is it just another day in the office and it is what it is? How are you dealing maybe with that a little bit, as some people may get a little nervous? The idea of Big Brother, I think, is really what people would be nervous about.
I will say it flat out. It's the exact opposite is true. The exact opposite is true. We just onboarded one of the largest container liners, and in the evaluation of their different committees, one of them, we had conversations with their union, and the union had a survey to 40 of their own vessels, in which they showed them what ShipIn does and asked them two questions. Do you see value in visual analytics? 1. 2, do you want this on your vessel? And 39 out of the 40 came out and said, we want this on board. Yeah, which was kind of, passing with flying, all thumbs up and go forward. Another example is how when we deploy the vessels with the kits for the service, we always have spare sensors, spare cameras on every kit, and we start seeing the crew in multiple vessels taking those spare cameras, installing them in additional locations, and telling us, can you please send us more, right? Because it helps them get to see areas that they are not visiting as frequently. It goes back to also, your previous comment about here's, what does it do versus what is the actual tool? Who cares about the actual tool? Tell me what it does. I think we can all understand and agree on the fact that over the last several decades, ships have gotten significantly bigger, and crew size has not gotten any bigger. And again, the opposite is true. We have not provided, in our perspective, the right digital, advanced, automated tools for the seafarers to do their jobs in a safe and productive way. And I think it is our role, in the industry to provide those. And we see this as our mission at ShipIn, to actually provide these tools. First thing we come into a room when we talk to customers is how we are seafarers developing tools for the seafarers. It starts there. It ends there.
I think that's really interesting, because as you're talking about it and talking about spaces where you don't see, my background is only on tankers, but I did spend 31 years ago around this time of the year. It wasn't sail, thank you, but it may have been steam. No, it was actually diesel. About 4 weeks over Christmas break, holiday break, on a ro-ro. Yep. And I would imagine that, when you say about spaces that you can't see, and that is the type of usage where if I had eyeballs there, the ship that sank, off of the Azores, with, my Lamborghini on it, unfortunately, okay, just joking. Hard luck. I gotta wait. I was supposed to be for my Christmas present for me, and it was the pearl blue, and they don't have it anymore. It's terrible. I wish. All kidding aside, because you are dealing with not only loss of property, but environmental issues because of the fuel oil, and most importantly, the human life, the human factor. You had 25 or so people on board that you had to evacuate. The point being is, it sounds like what you're trying to do is just help those 25 individuals who only have 50 eyeballs, assuming there's no issues, to look at the more of the spaces that could cause the headaches, especially with the advent of batteries that people are concerned about these sort of fires. So I'd imagine it's helping you sell your product and get the word out as well.
The responsibility on the vessel and the health of the safety of the crew and that of the cargo lies on the captain, right? In our perspective, this will not change. And so we are interested in providing the captain, the chief engineer, the crew on board, the best tools that we can provide to help them do what they need to do as they cross the seas. And, with all the challenges that they face today, with the pressure on supply chain, with new machinery that is coming on board and new cargo, right? There's even, you mentioned the Ro-Ro, new type of vehicles and batteries that are coming on that are kind of shifting how we need to think about what we're doing to handle this. And so I'm not saying we have the solutions for everything right there and, on the shelf, but there's no doubt that the tools exist that with the right partners we can develop and provide those. In this specific case, early hazard detection that might save the vessel. In this case, gladly no one got injured from the crew. So that is true. But as you can imagine, as we all know, the impact of that one incident or any other single incidents that we've heard about in the last several months has an impact on global supply chain, on the multiple stakeholders that the industry has, that everybody's feeling day to day, right? Through their insurance, through the pressure in port operations, etc.
Absolutely. And I think, the other thing, we continue to take this discussion maybe more also about, cargo handling, but certainly as people ship other things, and you talk about the other probably big aspect, and you mentioned container ships, right? People putting things in containers that, and I know that this is a long time issue of mislabeling of what's in the container of BLs. That becomes a really big problem. And it's not the fault of the crew, but it's ultimately becomes a problem of the crew. In other words, they have to deal with it. To be clear, saying that, certainly that becomes an issue that if you could get ahead of it, or there are sensors that could help identify that earlier, we wouldn't have these massive issues, because they kind of just snowball so quickly because there's so much cargo packed onto each one of these ships. So it sounds like that you guys are really kind of honing in on a problem that, it really just becomes an extra eyeball problem. And then how can you help improve that? So from an operational point of view, it definitely sounds positive for sure.
And it's not just the eyeball aspect, right? That's one of it. You mentioned the container fires. I'll mention, the Pearl X, right? Of a ship on 3-month-old vessel, right? Brand new on its third voyage, caught fire from one of the containers, and there's nothing you could do, right? The vessel, it's not like an old vessel that is suffering from issues. That is a brand new 3-month-old vessel that has caught fire. And we don't have the tools on board, or even no other port, no other tug came to the rescue, because there's very little you can do in these cases. And this is just to prove the point that the ships are getting bigger and we don't have the right automated tools. And so what is leading to automation, right? What tools, solutions can you harness to deliver a safer and, again, more productive maritime industry and global shipping?
And I think you go back to the T word, and I reflect upon words that my dad used to say to me, and that's tools, right? And one of the reasons why I went to went to SUNY Maritime, I got my degree and I got my license, and he said the more tools you can have in the toolbox as you grow professionally, the better off you are, And that's basically what we're talking about here, is equipping sailors, and then the captain, and then kind of moving up the chain, the ship, the technical manager, the ship manager, Absolutely. The owner, the investors, the insurance, because I know you guys are prominent with those folks as well. getting all of those folks, quote unquote, on board, giving them another tool in the toolbox so they can evaluate better. And hopefully as well, at some point, regulators, because how big is big, right? You look at these, I think I saw a graphic, a 382 meter container ship. It's mind blowing, right? When you actually put it at a berth, it's rather remarkable. I know you're based up in Boston, and I was in Boston in my company's office the day that the largest container ship came into Boston. I don't know the exact. Yeah, I was there like right as it was leaving. And then at the same time or right after that was this massive 380-meter cruise ship. And somebody said, this looks like a floating hotel. And they've had cruise ships in there regularly, but these are so large. It's unbelievable.
Do you, I don't know a hotel that can accommodate 6,000 guests. Do you?
Yeah, I know you'd have to look far and wide,
It's a city. It's a city. It's not a hotel. It's a city.
It's a city. It truly is. Pivoting a little bit to good stuff. You guys just got a large investment round. Congratulations on that. And certainly it goes to show about something, we've talked about the usefulness from a lot of different levels of the product. But I just want to ask a question a little bit, because we do talk to some folks about this. What are you seeing as the investment landscape these days, especially given that it's changed significantly in the last 7 months with interest rates, right? So certainly things have changed. Has that changed what has happened with your end, or is a good product and you're going to get a good valuation and move on? How have you guys kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, navigated during this funding round, and what do you see kind of the landscape going forward on that?
We established the company I mentioned nearly 4 years ago, a little bit under. And as we all know, the world has gone through a lot of different cycles within those last 4 years. A lot of things have happened, from the COVID days of the black swan that Sequoia predicted that actually didn't happen. So we live, and I think this is something that our industry is very accustomed to, right? It's the cyclicality, right? It's the volatility of global events. Although it was all condensed in recent years pretty significantly. To your question, I would even go further back. Look, when we were talking about the seed investments, it took us a bit of time to actually raise the initial, to bring in additional initial investors. Because you would come to people and say, look, maritime shipping, and I'll tell you, maritime what? And they say, like, ships, they carry 90% of only 90% of the world trade. And like, look, I don't have anybody in my Rolodex that I can call and validate. Oh, well, you look very nice. It's like, good luck. And we had some early supporters that have helped us get to that. We're privileged to have excellent investors that have helped us to get to where we are. And in the recent round, I will say that we're privileged to be able to show significant progress and a real product that is delivering a lot of value to our customers. And so with that, we've been lucky to have multiple term sheets, multiple and very leading, good investors to come and offer to partner with us in taking us to the next levels of delivering the value to the industry. When you talk about the climate at this time, I would say the conditions are now reversed, because there's a lot of uncertainty when you talk about the existing marketing automation and crypto and all that stuff that is has been very volatile. And you look at the next stages of investments, and people say, I don't know how to market, because obviously the market, how to price the rounds, because the market is kind of punishing fast growth and is in those industries. In our perspective and our experience has been that all of a sudden the attention has been put significantly onto the supply chain and also on maritime. And so we are a first mover with a new solution that the industry has not seen, that is delivering immense value. And so within that, I would say that a good product is a good product. And we know that we can continue to grow. We need to also remember that the VCs that have raised capital, they have capital to deploy. They're a lot more cautious now, and they've reduced, I would say, from some certain funds from 250 investments a year to about 25. So it's a significant reduction, but they still are active. And I think this is a prophecy, as they say, was given to the fools. So I'll refrain from being trying to predict the future, but we do the best we can to deliver value, and we believe that it will work to our benefit.
I think that's an interesting way to look at that, certainly about prophecy. But I do know you're absolutely right. And I've said this before. One of the interesting things about living in this part of the world in Southwest Connecticut, there's a lot of funds and money and people related to it. In the last year or so, I've gotten tons of people say, "Hey, listen, you're involved in maritime, right? What do you know about this space?" And you start to have these conversations, and there's a lot of interest because I think maybe they were foreshadowing what was going on with crypto. Crypto's, I don't want to talk about it. It's not a podcast about crypto. I don't know anything about it, but you see the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations and what happened earlier this week with, I think it's FTX, or last week with FTX. I think people don't have a appetite for that. But when you look at maritime, as boring as it could seem on paper, and I will be the first one on paper, but when you get to the nitty gritty, you talk about 90% of everything, talk about how dynamic it is, how the markets move. The industry is actually a wonderful industry, which I love. People kind of get hooked into it and go, okay, I like that. And they also realize that it's interesting because it is a little bit more slow moving, slower to adopt. If you have a foothold and can get into it, on the opposite, it's also harder to get thrown out. There's a lot of stickiness with products that have been around, maybe some of it even too long, but certainly it's a very good industry to be invested in. I've heard people talk about it. This is where fintech was 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, there may be some, winners and losers, but there's going to be a lot more winners and people are going to definitely invest. So it's exciting to hear what you have to say about that, because it's always something that's kind of, in the forefront of my mind, just as an observer of it. It's pretty cool.
I'll say two things about this. One, it's an immediate disqualifier when an investor tells me that, I love these non-sexy environments and industries. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What can be more romantic than the one industry that literally connects the worlds, bring people together, commodities around? Like, what can be more attractive than that? One. The second, we're seeing now, I would say on a weekly basis, multiple investors that are coming to us to request and looking into the industry and what we're doing. So it's I think that this is the whole concept of it's a slow moving industry. I think it's the thing of the past. I think it's similar to the investor, if a good product is a good product, also in the industry, the understanding that new tools are required has sunk. It's here, right? Everybody understands that. And now it's about how quickly in the organizational structure that we have in the industry can we actually absorb and adopt these solutions. And I think that for good solutions, as we've been able to demonstrate, the growth is very fast. And so even as we recruit into the company, you'll see, sales team members that are coming in and saying, look, I've not seen a single company that has been doing this in the industry. And so this is the pace of adoption is increasing across the board. And I think we're looking at very exciting, 4 to 5 years ahead of us.
That's excellent. Well, maybe I need to change the name of my podcast from The Last Dinosaur to something else. I don't, The First Bird or something, because birds evolved from dinosaurs, as it goes. As we start to wrap up, this has been a wonderful conversation and definitely wide ranging. And I like to finish this my conversation with kind of an easy, interesting question. What are you reading? I know you're raising funds and you're probably doing a lot of sales and a lot of thoughts and ideas and stuff. Are you reading anything interesting right now, or is it kind of too much work stuff and not a lot of reading?
A lot of work stuff, not a lot of time to read, I will say immediately. But if you ask me what's the last book or what I have currently next to my nightstand, it's actually a book by a Harvard business school professor by the name of Claudio Fernandez Arroz, that has written a book about it's not the how or the what, but the who. And it goes on to say, succeed by surrounding yourself with the best. So as we are building a technology company, a fast-growing organization, it's all about who are your partners that you're bringing in alongside for this journey, that are flexible, that are agile, that are extremely eager and motivated to take the challenge ahead. And it's an interesting, growing in kind of tripling our size from year to year has been an immense challenge, and it's been a massive learning growth. And so that's currently what I'm reading about.
Well, that makes sense given, like you said, the growth trajectory and kind of what you're doing and how you go. So I hope that it serves you well and you continue to grow and you continue to entertain all these wonderful investors and grow the company into the vision that you have, which is pretty awesome to hear. But as I wrap up, thank you, Osher. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us today about the company and where it's going and hopefully where it's going to go in the future. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Again, appreciate the invitation.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of The Last Dinosaur. You can find out more about Osher Perry and ShipIn Systems in the show notes. The Last Dinosaur can be found in all the places you normally get your podcasts, such as iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcast, and on YouTube. We have a channel there. Don't forget to follow. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Aversano, wishing you all fair winds and following seas.